and welcome to the first 2026 edition of Elevating with Marcia. I'm your host, Marcia Hawkins, and today we're going to kick off the new year, 2026, in a brand new year with Ignore and Ignite. All right, everybody, I'm really passionate about this topic, given the fact that the first of the year always seems to be a sense of renewal, a rebirth, a restart. We're all full of resolutions and rules and goals and lofty ideas of how we want the entire year to go. And most people, by the time they've hit, today is January 5th, 2026, some of those habits have crept back in from 2025 and beyond. And I'm sure a lot of you are already looking at your resolution list going, okay, I was going to do dry January, that didn't work out. Was going to start my diet, that didn't work out. Was going to do this, going to do that, and here we are, January 5th, and we're rethinking our goals. Sound familiar? Resolutions have always been a hot topic for me because I find it very difficult for people to really try to stick to it. And I totally get it. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about ignoring it and it will ignite. And it really comes down to whether we're talking about our health. Think about this for a second. How many times have you found out somebody was dealing with a health issue? And when they started giving you their story on how it all came about, what was one of the things that they said to you? Well, I was having symptoms, but I just thought I was getting older, or, I just gotten back from vacation. I was really overtired, or I hadn't been sleeping well, and maybe I should have paid attention to that, or my stomach had been really bothering me. And it's amazing how we go through a mental checklist in our mind of things that we probably should, and I'm going to be honest, I'm guilty of this myself, that we really should be paying attention to it. If not going to the doctors, and I'm just using our health as an example, if not going to the doctors, maybe doing a little research. I mean, AI, Dr. Google is very good for that, going through and, maybe just making note of it. Sometimes if you put something in, it may list a few symptoms that you hadn't thought about, and maybe you are experiencing a little more than what you think. Maybe it's just not, average run-of-the-mill fatigue. Maybe there's something more to it. Maybe you're having another symptom you hadn't thought of, and perhaps, maybe there's something, more to it, I guess is what I'm saying. Because a lot of times I know maybe, 5-6 years ago, a guy I went to high school with hadn't been feeling well, and he ignored it and ignored it and ignored it. And it did ignite with a vengeance. He ended up having pancreatic cancer, and he succumbed to it within a week of that diagnosis. And I'm not to scare anybody, but it is so true. Think about your health overall is a good place to start, because I think that has the largest consequence from it. But other examples are, you're ignoring your diet. You're eating things you're not supposed to. I had a podcast the other day with a wellness center. She brought up a really good point. We were actually talking about GLP-1s and why they work for some and they do not work for other people. And there's a number of reasons, and I'm going to be doing quite a few podcasts with this wellness center, so we're going to be able to cross-link those podcasts, so if you're interested in listening to those as well. Because I found it very fascinating, did not realize sleep apnea can tie into that. Gut health I kind of knew about, but not to the level that she explained it, which I found very fascinating. But there's many reasons why GLP-1s do not work for everybody. And she brings up a good point. One of the things that she counsels people on is how once you're on the GLP-1s, you're simply not going to be hungry. While that sounds like a dream come true for anybody who has, 50 plus pounds to lose, or even 20 pounds to lose, the reality of it is you have to be very strategic about your caloric intake, because you do need to eat. You definitely don't want to lose muscle mass, and you want to make sure that you get the proper nutrition. Being thin is great, but it's not great if you're not healthy. Not great if you ask anybody going through cancer that can't gain weight to save their life. it is extremely important that your diet be in tandem with any type of weight loss that you're doing, obviously, but even more so important if you decide to delve into the GLP-1 strategy of losing weight. And it's not a one size fits all, even though it's kind of marketed that way, it really is not. So it's extremely important that people understand how GLP-1s work, how you're going to possibly feel on them, and what you can do really to muck up the whole situation. A lot of people don't realize that you're really slowing your digestion down. And what's kind of difficult about that is that if you end up eating a lot of processed food, a lot of junk, always think in terms of like a one name piece of food: broccoli, apple, banana, cherries, steak, chicken. Those types of foods are natural foods. They're not processed. If you start getting into, anything that comes in a box or a bag, chances are you're eating processed food. And that is not something that works well with the GLP-1. But imagine, year after year of finally wanting to go on a GLP-1 or deciding that you really want to lose weight. It really goes back to the whole topic of this podcast, which is if you ignore it, it will ignite. It will blow up on you at some point. How many times, if you're listening to this and you've struggled with your weight all your life, how many times have you woken up on a Tuesday morning and thought, oh gosh, I was going to start my diet yesterday. I didn't. Someone asked me to go out to lunch. I overate. And then at dinner time, I ended up having larger than normal dinner. Then I had 2 glasses of wine. And you wake up and it's the first thought of your mind in the morning that okay, well, you know what? Now I'll start it next Monday. Well, guess what? Tuesday is just as good of a day to start a diet as any. So I don't like that excuse, but a lot of people use it. It is so true. Whenever you ignore really what your deep down desires are and you just ignore it, it's going to come back with a vengeance. It is. And it's going to ignite, and it's going to bring on another whole host of problems for you. Now, your clothes are fitting tighter, you're not feeling great. Maybe your blood sugar's high. Maybe your blood pressure's up. It's not a good way to live your life. Just not. Has long-standing ramifications. Ignore your weight and it will ignite. And you really need to focus on that. I highly recommend getting a health coach, a life coach to a certain degree, but you really need a health coach. And a lot of these wellness centers offer that when you go in for the GLP-1s. And it's not cheap. But you know what? Getting sick is not cheap either. So it's extremely important that you take inventory. 2026 or 2025 or 2028, whatever year finally is your threshold of I've had enough of this and I'm going to get this weight off. Whatever that looks like for you, whatever time frame that looks like for you. For me, I've never struggled with my weight. So it's for some, and people that know me, it might be lofty for me to say, well, ignore your weight and things will ignite on you, but it's the truth. It is the truth. And, we all have our issues that we struggle with, but weight is one of them that it is the gift that keeps on giving. The gifts are high blood pressure, high blood sugar, kidney issues, liver issues, insulin resistance, pancreas issues, pancreatitis, gallbladder issues, knee problems. A lot of people. I was at the hospital with someone for a test on Christmas Eve, and it was in the cardiac area of the hospital. And I was so surprised how many people were in there with power scooters, and they were waiting to get their heart monitors and their echoes. And I would say 95% of the people in there were quite overweight. So ignore your weight and it will ignite into a problem you really do not want to have. Okay, let's talk about our finances. How many times do we not sit down and strategize about our finances? We live in the moment. We don't think about it. We don't play the tape forward when we spend money that we shouldn't. I have a friend that worked in the lending industry, and part of her job description was that she had to go through and do financial counseling to find out. They were basically, if I remember this correctly, they did not qualify for a car loan, And this company would offer you kind of like Ready Credit. They would offer you a car loan, but they wanted to do it in the parameters of credit counseling, which I think is a great idea. So her job was to go through and do credit counseling with them before they were granted the loan. And she had mentioned to me one time how she was astounded that when she got a hold of their banking statements, that their debit card transactions were just, 3 times a day going out for fast food, and just how expensive it was, and people not even realizing, how much money they were spending per day. And a lot of people are guilty of that. A lot of people are guilty of that. They simply do not pay attention to it. So one good practice would be to, first of all, really try to get that habit under control, because that goes back to my original, conversation about weight gain and weight loss. If you're eating fast food 3 times a day, I guarantee you that ignoring that, it will ignite into more problems. It is the exact same thing with your finances. Imagine looking at your bank statement daily and looking at and counting up at the end of the month. And this is a great practice to get into, is go through and start writing down or pulling up using either a credit or a debit card. I'm more for credit than debit, which I know flies in the face of many financial counselors, but I do digress, and I will talk about that at another time. But it gives you an itemized list of everything that you're spending. And in some cases with a credit card, it will actually summarize it for you at the end of the month. It'll give you an exact total what you're spending on eating out. And again, that dovetails back to what I was talking about with your whole weight and whether or not, that right there alone, just switching out from eating out all the time to possibly just, having some food at home will ding ding help both. What a concept. So it's important that you track your spending. And if you're one of those people, and I think 99% of us are, maybe 97%, simply don't want to look at it. We don't want to know where our money's being spent because we're in that instant gratification mode of, I don't really care. I'm not going to think about it. And I know it's not good, therefore I'm not going to look at it. But it's super important. I'm a big proponent of tracking your spending, budgeting your spending, but more importantly, saving, then spending, saving your money, allocating money for your monthly expenses, and then seeing what's left over. And most people do the opposite. They spend their money, try to figure out how to pay their bills, and they're saving zero every month. And it's a recipe for disaster. I've talked to probably, trying to think, maybe 8 people in the latter part of 2025 who are well into their 50s that have zero retirement saved. Zero. And they're maxed out on credit cards, their homes are mortgaged to the hilt if they own a home. In some cases they don't, they're renting. It's time. It's time. If you ignore it, that will ignite on you, blow up on you when you go to retire. And at that point, there's not a lot of time left to make up the difference to get into retirement. So got a few strategies about that I can help you with. Again, all my contact information will be in this podcast in the subject line. I'm happy to make an appointment with you and go over that with you and explain to you how you can kind of make up for lost time. But truthfully, if you're not of the mindset that it's a problem and you're not even willing to look at it, I can't help you. Nobody can, actually. Nobody's going to be able to help you with that. So it really is important, again, that you do not ignore the financial signs of what is going on in your life. And then, having a 5-alarm fire, like a financial emergency or a crisis, or you lose your job and you have no savings and you're trying to make up for lost time. Not a good feeling. And in most cases, it will bring on a level of anxiety and depression like no other. Finances is one of those really big topics that will destroy relationships, cause depression, cause, addiction tendencies to rear their ugly head when people get stressed out about money. So again, ignore it and it will ignite. So it's important that you take I love the end of the year time to kind of go over all of my own stuff. But here you are in the beginning of the year. If you haven't done it, it's a really good time. In fact, I've done previous podcasts where I actually talk about going through every quarter and looking at your subscriptions, maybe looking at the interest rates on your mortgage. Maybe they've dropped. Maybe you can save extra money. And I'm not a big proponent of continually refinancing your home. However, if you're at a high interest rate, sometimes it does make sense. But a good financial person would be able to walk you through that. And you can use AI. Drop your current mortgage into AI and have it figure it out if it would be worth it financially for you to do that. So highly recommend. But yeah, another thing that, kind of in the same vein with the finances, is that I call it the broken window syndrome when it comes to your home. A lot of times I think people forget that the home that you purchase and that you pay out, it will always be the biggest payment you have in most cases. It'll be the biggest purchase that you make, I should say. It may not be your biggest payment, but it will be the biggest purchase that you'll make in your lifetime is usually the home, the roof over your head. And I'm always surprised how many people will neglect basic upkeep on their home. Again, if you ignore it, it will ignite. And a lot of people will do that. Being in the insurance industry, I'll have people that will call me and say, my roof is leaking and I need to file a claim. Well, a lot of people don't realize that you can file a claim, but in a lot of cases, it's not going to get paid. And the reason for that is you need an underlying peril. For example, if the wind, even if your roof was old and aged and probably ready to leak anyways, if you had a windstorm come through and it peeled the shingles off your roof or back and allowed water to come in, that claim would get paid. But just because you have a leaky roof and now it's time to replace your roof, an insurance adjuster is going to look at the age of the roof. And in most cases, you're going to get a non-renew notice if your roof is severely old, damaged, or otherwise. They're going to put you up for non-renewal for that. And a lot of people get upset about that. But if you were the insurance company, would you want a property that had multiple things damaged on it, especially an expensive roof, knowing full well that a claim could possibly follow if they were to renew that policy? So it's really important that little things like broken windows and peeling paint in an aged roof, or a chimney that it needs to be pointed or reflashed, or steps that are starting, maybe you've got some stone or cement steps that are crumbling, maybe a banister fell off from, maybe you have termites in the wood and it fell off. Aside from the insurance side of me, if you needed to fire sale your house at some point, maybe you've had an emergency, maybe you've been promoted and you have to relocate. The last thing you want to do is get a 20-page, 25, 30, 50-page report that your property is in dire need of repair. So again, if you ignore it, it will ignite. So just, trying to perform yearly maintenance on your home, I think, is one of the best things you can do to not only protect your investment, but also prevent insurance cancellation. And also, if you wanted to refinance it, if you suddenly found yourself in a position where you needed to quickly sell your home, not to mention the fact that it devalues your property when you don't take care of it. So take a sense of pride in your home. Don't ignore those minor and sometimes large repairs. Really try to stay on top of it. I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is, in most cases, it's much easier to do the, monthly, yearly maintenance on things and fix things when they're small and not let them escalate into a major, major problem, which can happen. Think cleaning your furnace versus not cleaning it, and 10 years later you got smoke, soot, back puffing into your house, and now all your walls need to be repainted. So it's one of those things that I get a little evangelical about. But, and much like your car, same thing. Do the maintenance on your car. You take it in for a tune-up. Check, do the oil changes. Use good gas. Take good care of it. Oh my gosh, sometimes I'll get in people's cars and it's like a landfill. I don't understand why people spend $50,000, $60,000 on a car and then just have half-eaten cheeseburgers wrapped up from McDonald's rotting on the back seat of the car. I don't get that. I really don't get it. So really, the essence of this podcast really comes down to stop ignoring it when things are, take your index finger and your thumb and put it about an inch apart. That's when you want to deal with things. That's when you have the most options. That's when it's going to be the least expensive. And you can apply this concept to so many layers of your life. Your relationship. Think again, thumb, index finger, inch big. When things are a little off, it's much easier to deal with it than ignoring it and igniting into something much, much bigger. Your relationships, your finances, your health, your wellness, your weight. There's just so many, your career. Think about that. Little things that may be going wrong in your career that maybe you're the author of. Maybe you need to take some time to self-reflect and think about what you can do so you don't get yourself into a position where your yearly review does not go that well. Maybe you have an addiction in your life. Maybe you're drinking too much. Maybe you're overeating. Maybe maybe you had back surgery and you got on the painkillers and maybe you are struggling to get off those. Again, ignore it and it will ignite. So it really is one of those things that I think if you can do some self-reflection on this beginning of 2026 and put your life, your finances, your weight, your health, your job, your relationships on a really good footing, at that point, it's a win-win situation. And it will get your entire year, it'll get the entire next 5 years, the remainder of your life, whatever that looks like, on the path that you need it to be to have your life really calm, peaceful, energized. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Because as time goes on, the more your house is in order, it's so much easier. You wake up in the morning, you're not hungover with stress, and I mean that, hungover with stress. How many of us wake up in the morning and go, "Oh my God, it's Monday morning. I've got to get to my job. I left so much undone on Friday." Or maybe you're coming back from the holidays and you kind of left things a mess and you shouldn't have. Maybe you really overdid it all weekend and you're just not feeling 100%. So kind of use this phrase, if you will, ignore it and it will ignite, and apply that to every aspect of your life and get your life back on track. It is the gift that keeps on giving. I guarantee you it will pay you dividends that you cannot even imagine. All right, everybody, that's my mantra for 2026 to kick off. I've got quite a few podcasts that I'm working on with some great topics that will really help you elevate your life. I hope you'll tune back in. Until then, I'm Marcia Hawkins, your host of Elevating with Marcia, and please, please make it a great week.